Okay, this video is for the third topic, which is percent by composition. And there's three skills here. So this is application heavy, and we should talk about very quickly what that means. In the notes slideshow, it explains that application is more than just copying sample questions into your notebook. Application is your process for trying to figure out what you are going to do with information that you learned. Okay, so this is a math procedure. You should understand what you use it for, when you should use it, and then in terms of application, there's many, many steps here, and you're going to need to make sure that you've created an internal set of rules so that you can remember what the steps are and do them by yourself without looking at the slideshow. Okay, so that means that you have to do a certain amount of independent practice, but also that your practice in your notebook should include you attempting the problems, writing out a set of your own steps, not copying mine, and then also going back and checking work that problems you've tried without looking, trying to see what you're doing correctly, what you're doing wrong, and analyzing your mistakes and then trying again. So if you're not doing the full process, that's why you can't do the problems when you sit down to do a quiz or a test. So again, I'm going to say this has got a lot of steps to it. So let me just go over very quickly what are the three things you have to be able to do. So all of them are related to percent composition. Percent composition is essentially breaking down a compound into its separate elements or parts, whatever part we're talking about. So if it's a hydrate, it could be the amount of water. If it is a regular compound, it could just be one of the elements in that compound. The reason why this information is important is essentially if I were doing a chemical analysis in the lab, this is the data I would have. I would do the analysis and it would tell me how much of each element, like the percentage of each element, and then I would use that data with some other tests that I would do in order to figure out the actual empirical and molecular formula of the compound. So this is both learning to calculate percent by mass and also using percent by mass to get an actual chemical formula. And there's two types that you're going to be able to get depending on the data you have. So let's go through this one step at a time. One, you're going to learn how to calculate percent error. Two, you're going to learn how to use percent error to calculate empirical formula. Then three, you're going to be able to take that empirical formula and the molar mass of the compound and get the molecular formula. So some other things that might be an issue for you at this point. When I say empirical and molecular formula, if you don't understand what those two terms mean, you can't tell me the difference between them, then this is going to be real confusing for you. So make sure that that foundation information from the other slideshow, make sure you have that down pat. But there is a review of that in this slideshow also. This slideshow is a combination of some math procedures as well as I had two slideshows on chemical formulas. So some of that might feel like review, and some of it might just clarify earlier stuff that you weren't sure about. Okay, so here's your formula. When you take percentages, you're always just taking the percentage. You're putting the part of the compound or whatever you're taking a percentage of. So say I was going to the store and I wanted to buy something and they say, hey, this is 40% off. You would want to know what part of the total price are you saving. So you would take you could plug it in. Actually, if you were doing it from the percentage, you do it backwards. But if somebody said to you, hey, this costs $100, I'm going to give you $20 off. The part that you're going to take off, you would put in the top. Then the total price, $100, you would put on the bottom. And then you times that by 100 and it would tell you what the percentage of your discount is. Okay, so it's a very general. Percentage formulas are always part over whole times 100. And this, for a compound, will give you the mass percent. Now, this interfaces with your previous knowledge meaning that it requires you to understand molar mass, which is also known as gram formula mass. Okay, so whenever you're doing this calculation, the hole on the bottom will be the gram formula mass or the molar mass. Okay, the mass of the part is the molar mass of only that part of the compound. So the reason why I say molar mass is because it could be, um, multiple atoms. So this is just the formula, the definition of formula mass, just to review. There's a lot of review where we repeat things over and over again. That's intentional to make sure that you really do the process enough times that your brain can remember the information. So if I'm going to, for example, do a percent composition problem with copper 2 sulfate, I first need the formula mass so that I have the mass of the whole. So you can do that calculation. I will tell you, though, that when they're asking you for percent composition or empirical or molecular formula from percent composition, a lot of times they just give you the gram formula mass because they don't want you to do the extra work. They want you to focus on the part of the problem they asked you to solve. So this is just some quick review. How do you calculate gram formula mass? What is gram formula mass? And then also, how do you get the gram formula mass of a bigger compound, making sure that you're counting all your atoms correctly. So all of these answers are on the slides. Make sure you go through them. All right, so I'm going to actually do a gram formula mass 2% composition problem. In this question, they ask you to show the numerical setup for calculating the percent composition by mass of oxygen in aluminum oxide. Okay, in this case, the formula has 2 aluminums and 3 oxygens, and see, they give you the gram formula mass, so you shouldn't take extra time calculating the gram formula mass, aka molar mass, because that will just make the problem take longer than it should. Okay, so make sure you've identified the part, the whole, and then you can plug it into the formula. So the part is the amount of oxygen, the whole is the molar mass, and then you're going to plug it in. Okay, so this all just explains that. Now I'm going to round the molar mass of oxygen to 16. On the new periodic table, they have rounded it for you already. So if there are 3 oxygen in this formula, that means you need to do 3 times 16 because you're doing all the oxygen that's actually in the compound. You don't do just 1 oxygen. So this is a pretty common error that people will make. The other error would be if they didn't give you the formula, if they told you the name, if you wrote the formula incorrectly, like you put ALO and you didn't balance the charges on the ionic compound, you would do the calculation wrong. Okay, so I would do 3 times 16, which is 48. I would put the part that's just the oxygen over the whole molar mass, times it by 100, and that would tell me that 47% of this compound is just the mass of oxygen. Okay, percentages don't have units, FYI. All the units are in the numerator and the denominator, so they all cancel. So I noticed that a lot of people don't pay attention to this stuff, and then they are asking me in the middle of a test what the units on a percentage are. There are no units on a percentage. The units are all going to cancel out, so it's not given with units. All right, now there's a bunch of sample problems here where I go through everything with you. I talked to you about if you're doing, so this is phosphorus trichloride. This is molecular. Both of these are nonmetals. Okay, there's no charge balancing here because this is molecular. There are 3 chlorines and 1 phosphorus. The molar mass is given, so I don't have to calculate it. I then, if it wants me to do the percent by mass of just the chlorine, I do just the chlorine. So chlorine weighs about 35 grams per mole. I have 3 of them. 3 times 35 is 105. So then I'm going to have 105 over my total mass. Now, see, I have it color coded for you. So the parts in purple and the holes in blue. So you can keep track of how I got the formula set up. All right, and there's just a ton of practice here. So you should go through all of that. Now we're talking about how you get from percent composition to empirical formula. So first things first, make sure that you know how to do percent composition without looking. There is no formula for this. And from what I'm seeing in the test, uh, I'm getting conflicting data about the Regents exams. They did not put some things in the reference table, and yet they expect you to know how to do it. They expect you to understand the concept well enough to apply it, even if you're um, not necessarily looking for a calculation with an answer. So you do need to know in concept what is percent composition by mass. If you are going to derive an empirical formula, that just means find it or figure it out from the empirical formula. Uh, sorry, from the percent composition. This is a lot of steps. So make sure that you have a good understanding of the math. So here is a link. You have to click on this link. I've offered this link to you multiple times. It's in the study guide, it's in the slideshow. This is just the best way for us to go over this rather than me try to explain it in the slideshow. I have a study guide here which summarizes all the steps for you. And again, you should be in your application process doing these steps out and explaining them to yourself. What you're going to do is you're going to take your percentages that are given in the problem and you're going to convert them into mole ratios. And you do that by converting all of these. First of all, you assume that this is out of a 100-gram sample. 40% of 100 grams is 40 grams. So mathematically, it makes sense for us to be able to just drop the percentage and turn this into grams. You're then going to convert that into moles because you want a mole ratio, how many moles of each element are in the formula. You then convert it into a ratio by dividing them all by the smallest number of moles. So the smallest number of moles I got was 3.33. So I divide all of these numbers, 3.33, 6.7, and 3.33, by that number. And then that gives me a ratio, a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. That simplest ratio of carbon to hydrogen to oxygen is the empirical formula. So this is how they figure out the formulas of compounds from a chemical analysis of the elements they find in it. Now, it's actually just one more step, well, two more steps to get to the molecular formula from that empirical formula. So sometimes you only have to solve for the empirical. You can stop here. Sometimes they'll give you the empirical and the molar mass, and they'll only ask you to do this second part. So that's what I see mostly on the Regents these days. So I'm wondering what that will look like on the new exam, but let's just make sure we know how to do it just in case. So if you calculate this, what you're going to do is you're going to first use the empirical formula that you figured out or that was given to you and get the gram formula mass of this, the molar mass of this. So 1 carbon, 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen. And you're going to take their molar masses just like you calculate any other gram formula mass and you add them up. So for the empirical formula, I'm getting a molar mass of 30 grams per mole. I'm going to take the molar mass I am given. You have to be given this. There's no way around it. It will be somewhere in the problem. You're going to divide your total molar mass by the one you figured out for your empirical formula. And that's going to give you a whole number. You're then going to take that whole number and multiply it by the subscripts in your empirical formula. So let me just go back up and look at that. So I get the whole number 6, right? I'm going to then take, let me slow down. I'm going to take 6 and I'm going to multiply it by these subscripts. So 6 times 1 means I have 6 carbons. 6 times 2 in the empirical formula means I have 12. 6 times 1 means I have 1 oxygen. This happens to be the formula, the molecular formula for glucose, as well as a lot of other simple sugars. So it's a pretty common example that comes up on the Regents, which is we basically expect you to know how to recognize glucose. So there's your molecular formula, which you figured out or derived from the empirical formula when you were given the molar mass. It's all very straightforward, but you're not going to remember how to do it unless you practice a lot. So you're going to see that in the slideshow I've given you a lot of practice. So this section is just a review of types of chemical formulas. I'm just going to go up over the example problem. And then I'm going to stop the video. So this is a quick short video, but there's a lot of process here. There's a lot of there's a lot of application here. So this is just a review. This is a big, giant organic molecule, which you're going to be getting into third quarter. In this big, giant uh, molecule, you're going to see that there are 4 different ways to write the chemical formula. So there's 4 types of chemical formulas. You learned them in the last slideshow. They are structural, empirical, molecular, and then if you're feeling advanced, you can toy with condensed structural formulas. I am not holding you that responsible for that one yet. We're going to do that when we do organic because that's really what it's for, but I will show you how I did it. So the first type is the molecular formula. The molecular formula means all I did was count all the atoms that were actually present in this structure. So the structural formula is what's shown. Structural formula shows you the actual makeup, like how the molecule is actually arranged. Okay, if I count all the carbons, there are 8 of them, and then I count all the hydrogens, there are 18 of them, and I write that out as a formula, that's my molecular formula. It just tells me count all the atoms that are actually present in that compound. Then if I simplify this by finding a number I can divide into both subscripts to get me the lowest subscript possible. In this case, it was 2. That would get me the empirical formula. Once I've simplified this, and it should not be able to be simplified anymore, right? So there is no number I can divide into both 4 and 9 and simplify this anymore. So it's finished. So this is my simplest or empirical formula. Again, empirical formulas only give you the simplest ratio of the 2 elements or 3 elements or whatever it is found in that compound. It doesn't give you a lot of other useful information. Remember, that's because an empirical formula would be a stage in the process of analyzing the actual formula of a compound. And if you're feeling advanced, this is what the structural formula looks like if I condense it. So a structural formula summarizes the structure in a way that allows me to write the formula faster, but still shows me the actual structure. So again, I'm just pre-gaming this so that you don't feel like it's completely foreign when we get into it third quarter. But this section of the molecule, which is on the end, see how it says 1 carbon and 3 hydrogen? That's this section of the formula. Then what I get is a repeating pattern of 2 hydrogens connected to a carbon. That's called CH2. I have that same repeating pattern 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 before the structure changes. So I'm just going to put that in parentheses and put, hey, I have, oh, I wrote it wrong. I have 6 CH2s. I'll fix that. And then at the end, I stop with another CH3. So this basically tells me what this structure looks like without having to draw the whole thing. And that's why it's called a condensed structural formula. Condensed meaning I squished all that information down into a smaller place. All right, just very quickly, let's run through the rest of these and see. There is some good clarifying information in here, so make sure you really understand it. Go ahead and review it a second time. This repetition is deliberate, and that is because the more you repeat the work, the more you will build a neural pathway to help you understand this, and the quicker those neurons will fire, and the better you'll be able to remember. If you keep skipping over the repetition and don't practice, you're not going to remember it when you need it. So please do make sure that you guys just go, well, I already know it. You don't already know it. Do it again. All right, so there's more practice questions here. I may go back in and edit some of these just because I really would like to give you the answers to the practice questions. So if I can get around to it, I will do that. All right, this is done. This is a quick video because this is very straightforward. The time part is going to be the time you take to sit down and practice. So make sure you use the study guide.